Hi, hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
All good, thanks. So we're here to talk about the new album that's coming out quite shortly, it's just around the corner, 29th of May on Relapse. How are things going ahead of the release? I know you guys are planning also to play. You have some shows planned for like the same days of the release.
Yeah, we're the release is 29th in just a little bit more than a week, and we're gonna prepare like we've been rehearsing some during since January, I think, and new songs. And Per Wiberg is with us live as a second guitarist, and we're gonna do some like pre-production stuff now. The venue we're playing at on in Gothenburg, we're gonna since we're based in Gothenburg, around Gothenburg anyways, we're gonna borrow that stage for a couple of days in the beginning of next week to get everything ready, and then yeah, going to Malmö, south of Sweden first, and then Stockholm, and then Gothenburg to start it off.
So you mentioned that you're going to have a second guitarist. Is this the first time you do this
No,
on stage?
he was with us the first time on a festival 2 years ago. And when we started rehearsing some new songs, I felt even more that the newer tracks are really to have two guitars, either that we do like harmonies, guitar harmonies, or I can do lead stuff and Per can do rhythm stuff to make it bigger.
Mm.
I miss it sometimes, like I've been missing it sometimes throughout the years, like a second guitar at times. But so it's really coming to really nice together.
Do you think this will ever be something that you will consider to add a guitarist within the band rather than only live?
I think it's probably gonna be only live.
Mm.
Um, I think. I mean, we haven't really the only time when we have felt that we need a second guitarist is live.
Yeah.
So, but Pat is a really nice guy and is a great musician. So he's been. I mean, he's been playing with everyone, every Swedish like Opus,
Mm.
Spiritual Beggars. He's been out with Clutch too. So he's just a very nice guy and a really nice guy to have with us in like both guitarist, but also he's been doing some keyboards and stuff too live. So he's a great addition to the band.
Yeah. So you've released six albums in 12 years, and but I believe Neverending is the marks the biggest gap between two
Yeah.
albums. Your Time to Shine was released 5 years ago. How come you took longer for this album?
I think after Your Time to Shine, we had it was all the COVID and all the, so it touring kind of slowed down a little. And then we started kind of to slow down a little bit too. And I think we just, we've been playing so many shows together. I think when we took like a little break, we had almost 400 shows together, I think. And I mean, I did some solo stuff, Mika did too, and Espen did too. So I think we just needed to, do something else for a little while. I mean, we still played shows, some festival shows, even though we didn't write or rehearse any new material. We just played some live shows, and that was kind of enough to keep us going. But then around 3 years ago, I think I started to write more songs again, and I think I didn't show into the rest of the band until I had like six or maybe seven songs. And then we talked about if we should do another album. And I think 1 year ago, like March or February last year, we kind of decided that we wanted to do another album, or maybe even earlier, maybe 1.5 years ago. I can't really remember exactly, but somewhere around there we started discussing, and I had some demos that I presented to the band, and we all felt that maybe we can do an album of this. But then came the next step, that how are we going to do the next album? And we talked about different options and realized maybe we should try to work with a producer this time.
Was it the first time?
Yeah. It was the first time we worked with a producer, and since this record, there's some shorter songs that are more like to the point. No, there's some like jammy parts here and there, but not that many. And we felt like maybe a producer this time could be a cool thing. And so we just tried to find someone the three of us liked, and the only one we actually could agree on, the three of us, was Sylvia. And then it turned out that Relapse had some connections, so they contacted her, or if we got their email address or something, I can't remember. And we started a conversation, and before she didn't know who Monolord was in the beginning, but then she said, I'll give it a listen and get back to you. And just like an hour later, she emailed us back and said, hey, I really want to do this. So, and then it just kept on. Yeah, we had some meetings, and then we decided to go there to record them.
So you went all the way to Oregon. So how was that? I was wondering, like, how much of your own instruments did you bring with you? Because I know, like, you have like a lot of your own guitars, of course, amps and everything, that maybe you're very specific with some of them.
She asked every one of us in the band, like, what gear do you use at home? So she could, like, she had some stuff, but she said also that she could try to get some stuff. So she actually bought an amp, an old orange amp, because it's one that I like.
Yeah.
And I brought 2 guitars. Mika brought 2 basses. I think Espen brought his snare drum and maybe some cymbals. But I think he used Sylvia's drum kit, which was a little bit smaller than Espen's own kit. So I think, I mean, the drums still sound heavy, but there's more attack to them, I think, than previous recordings. But I brought some pedals and stuff, so my sound was, and we had tons of different amps and stuff. So I got the sound that I wanted out of it.
And how was for Espen being like not involved in that?
I mean, we all agreed that this is something we want to do. And I mean, we have been, like, since the first album, the three of us have been just walking around we recorded everything, the first three records in our old rehearsal space, which is like 16 square meters. So we were just there, just moving mics around, or, when Espen was playing, I was recording, and if I was playing, Espen was recording, so we all kind of helped out a lot, doing a lot of different stuff. But the more then Espen got his studio, then he did more of that. But we have all, the three of us, been like involved in the recording.
Yeah. And Sylvia's studio, I've seen some videos that you guys shared, is huge.
Yeah.
Her studio, yes. So it's completely opposite from what you had in the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big difference for sure. And but I think it was nice for the three of us just to not do anything, just actual recording. I mean, sometimes I like going around, putting up microphones and bring some coffee and adjust microphones and do stuff. But now we could just focus on drinking coffee.
Yeah.
But
which is very important.
We had a really nice coffee roaster just across the street.
Yeah.
We could just go over and buy really nice coffee, like at any time.
And lyric-wise, you say that this album was much more intimate and personal than the previous records. And I was wondering, like, because you also mentioned like your solo album, and I remember like around that era that when you released the Solitary Plan, like you had said that one of the main differences between your solo and Monolord, apart from like some acoustics and all stuff, was the fact that you were writing more intimate and personal lyrics. So are these two worlds now like one thing? They have merged? Is that a more like, is the solo thing still something that you want to pursue at one point?
I think the reason that the lyrics got more personal this time is I had a really long relationship that ended, like 12 or 13 years or something, and I had to move, even though I mean, long story, I had to move and get an apartment, and I mean, I loved that house that I lived in, but you know, these are things that happen, but I I mean, it was a lot of other stuff involved too. So I think my venting thing was some of the songs became kind of emotional because of that. I think. I mean, just and then just the lyric wise, I think it's kind of it's not only. I mean, the lyrics are not only my experiences. It's sometimes I can if I have a friend that talk about stuff with me, I can sometimes see through the eyes of my friend and write about that, but in like me form. So it's sometimes it's hard to. It's not all about me, but it's. I think it's just something that I had to get out in some way.
Yeah.
This time it was very overwhelming at times. So I think that's why it's felt make more sense for being more personal.
So is there like an or a fil rouge, something that you think connects the songs like thematically, like lyrically? Like also like what does the title refer to?
Well, I think the theme, if you can say there is kind of a theme, and the title Neverending refers to like sometimes you have like maybe a patch of a bunch of years where you feel that everything is working against you, or everything that happens are just another like more bad news after bad news, and or stuff like that. So like the actual song, it's never ending. The closer on the record is more like a story about, I mean, betrayal, but it's also, to me, it depicts you know that movie The Witch.
Yeah.
So the landscape where they have their house, like it's kind of a old farm thing, but it's rocks all over. You can't really grow anything. It's just miserable, and it's stuff like that mixed into like hardship and things that just works against you, combined with a feeling of like being overwhelmed by everything. Kind of that's the kind of the theme of the whole album.
So it's never ending. So there's like it's a little bit like hopeless.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. And so like it's funny that you put never ending like this sort of like the title tracks, we could say, at the end of the album because it's never ending. Like I think that the track list works really well because especially when you listen to the album like from first to last with that song at the end, like culminating the whole trip. So like how long do you spend thinking about like what song goes where?
I think that happened. I had some idea about, like, for example, Iodine and You Bastard, that they were supposed to be kind of early on, but I don't think we decided until I think actually Sylvia was a little bit involved I think she had her preferred song order, and then we had ours. I think she had like Oozing Wound first.
Mm-mm.
But it's just we tried some different options, but then I think it was a mix of Sylvia's list and our list of how we wanted to do things. Not like she would like decide anything, but she had some good ideas, so we
Yeah.
chose to mix those
So
two
like you've
options.
obviously for the first time you have like another voice on Monolord records, which is a very specific voice which creates this like death doom ending to the album, and it's Jörgen, of course. How did this idea come about? Like, did you ever think before of like even like yourself singing in that way to give like a different type
I
of?
I actually did sing that way
Oh yeah.
on the demo I did.
Oh yeah.
But when we started to rehearse that song, I mean it took me 2 or 3 days to finish that demo because I really can't sing that way. So it takes my voice was like fucked for 2 or 3 days afterwards, and it took me 2 or 3 days to record it. So I was just like, there's no way I can do this live anyways. So when we were in the studio, we still weren't sure what to do. But
But you
after a
wanted
while,
to add, you wanted to add that, you wanted to have it that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I tried singing it like my way, and it only fit in where the parts where I am singing
Yeah.
in like the end and the middle part. But the other parts didn't really sound, it didn't sound right because the demo was also growl. So, it like was kind of, I think we were already set that's how we want to do it. But then I realized that met Jörgen a couple of times and I know the guys in Grave a little bit. So it was just like natural because Jörgen has got one of the most powerful voices in metal,
Yeah.
and we saw them live a couple of times festivals this summer. So we played on did we play on the same stage maybe I can't remember. We played an hour before them or something, and we watched their set, and it's just they're amazing. And then when we were in the studio, we were thinking about what singers we know, and just came up with Jörgen. And Jörgen answered like within a couple of hours and said, I think it was a Thursday, and he said, I will have the files for you sometime this weekend. And on Saturday, he's sent the stuff, and it was just Sylvia put it in there, and worked on it a little like sound wise, but it was just perfect.
Yeah. So in Monolord, there's always been like this like 70s touch, like whether it be like equipment, style as well, or like direct musical influence. Would you say that this is like your permanent point of reference even today?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, still, I mean, death metal is of course not the '70s thing, but
Yeah.
other than death metal, I mostly listen to '70s music still, and I think it's so amazing that you can still find. I mean, I've listened to. I mean, when internet and like downloading things started happening, I downloaded so much music from the '70s that you couldn't. I mean, we couldn't get the records where we grew up because there was no record stores anymore. But we could find like tons of old records that I burned so many CDs and had my car and my CD player, like portable CD player, and I listened to music all the time. And I can still find today music that I haven't heard from the '70s, and I mean, it never ends. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's my favorite era of music for sure. So it's not that, and all the newer bands. I mean, I listen to also have the same references, I think. So even though, say, if I listen to Cathedral, that music is so based in the 70s also. So it's my favorite.
But all doom is in the end. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it all comes from the 70s. So.
So you mentioned death metal and like being growing up without having like record stores where you could get records. So you grew up in Gothenburg, I believe, which is like obviously like such a
No,
legendary
I
city. You
actually grew up
didn't.
in a really small town.
I out in the area of Gothenburg.
Maybe 2 hours away ish.
Okay.
One
Okay, that's not
one.
too close because I was
No.
wondering like how was growing up there being like such a important city for sound
I mean,
development.
me and my buddies, we took the train or bus to Gothenburg to buy records
Yeah.
when we were in like eighth and ninth grade, I think. I had a buddy who had an uncle who lived in Gothenburg. So on Saturday mornings, we would just go to the bus station, take a bus to Gothenburg and spend all our money on records, sleep at his uncle's place, and then just went back home with a lot of records and no money.
And did you see any bands like what were your first bands that you saw in that era?
I mean, we were just barely 15 at that time. So we went to another town that's not that bigger than the town I grew up in called Karlstad. And there we saw so many punk rock bands. But there was a genre called trallpunk in Swedish. It's like sing-along punk rock. It was kind of fast, but lyrics in Swedish, and no one outside of Sweden knows any. I mean, maybe some, but no one knows those bands except Swedes. But then after that, I got into more like deep beat crust punk after that. And then that led to death metal. And the same time, I started listening to Black Sabbath. But the first gigs were mostly like punk shows, were like all ages punk shows.
When it comes to like doom stoner or like even like heavy psychedelic, I feel like Sweden, like apart from like pioneers like Candlemas, but like even like later on with Monolord, of course, and then like bands like Witchcraft, Lowrider, Track Fighters, it's always been like a fertile scene, but bands are like actually like also like becoming really quite big everywhere in the world. Why do you think this scene became so strong there in particular?
We have always had a big like culture. There was a lot of money put into culture, like government funding and all of that. So we had a lot of places to play. We had a lot of rehearsal spaces. We could even I don't know the exact terms in English, but you can like rent a place, but then you mark every time you're there to rehearse, and then you will get like money back to buy strings or get cheaper studio time. And there were like big complexes with just rehearsal rooms, and like one studio was kind of common. And it's been like this since the 70s, I think. But I mean that like one thing that's been so great with Sweden, the culture life. But now the current government, they pull almost all the funding, so there's hardly any rehearsal spaces left, and there are a lot of places where there used to be shows are closing too because they don't get any government funds anymore. So we'll see what happens in like 5 to 10 years if anything changes. But I think that's a big part of it, because and like almost all the big bands in Sweden that had like made it or whatever, they all been in the same process with the rehearsal spaces that you can get cheaper and stuff. Everyone has been in that. So
that's such a shame that they just cut all this funding.
Yeah, for a more right wing government culture isn't as important, even
Exactly.
though that's so weird because that is what defines a country is the culture, and it's just a lot of bullshit.
We have unfortunately the same problem in Italy. Well,
Yeah, yeah,
culture like means nothing for the government, basically.
yeah.
So it's something that I recently found out about you, and maybe I don't know why I did not know before, is that before you Monolord, you played bass in Draconian
Mhm.
and you appeared on the first album of the band. So what memories do you have of those days?
They are actually from that same small town where I grew up. So we all grew up there, and we knew each other since I mean, one of the guys is my childhood friend, the Joan, the guitarist and songwriter. We played in a bunch of bands since we were like 12. But I remember it being the shows we played there. Draconian had only like released a couple of demos before, so it wasn't like a really well-known band like that. But Anders, the singer, he's a bit older, so he did some like tape trading and stuff like that when that that got or was popular. But I remember being a bit chaotic because we were kind of young, and there was no like band leader or whatever, and it was just a bit dysfunctional. And I'm still amazed how we even made it to play any show. I mean, I had so crappy gear at the time. I didn't even own a bass, and I was a bass player. I owned the bass, but it was a really shitty bass. I remember I was going to a show in Norway. I think we left. It took us like forever, and it was a snowstorm in those like mountain roads in Norway that goes like this and are really. I mean, I'm amazed we even got there. And I remember coming there, and I didn't even bring a bass amp. I was just hoping there was a bass amp on stage there.
Was
So,
there in the end?
yeah.
So do you ever
Uh,
re-listen to that album?
hmm?
Have you re-listened to the album recently?
I listened to it like a couple of years ago, like maybe a year ago. I listened to it like once every 5 to 6, 7 years or something.
And what about the first Monolord records?
Hmm?
Do you
What?
listen? Do you go back to
Um,
your own records with Monolord?
I listen to not maybe not an entire album, but I go back to because sometimes when I write new songs, I'm kind of sometimes looking for like a vibe of some sort, and then I feel like, oh, I mean, the songs might be very different, but the vibe is
Yeah.
the same. So sometimes I like, oh, how did I achieve this vibe in this song that I'm looking for? And then I realize, oh, maybe it's just because it's a clean guitar in the background. Maybe that's it. And,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to. And then sometimes there's songs that I just haven't listened to in a really long while. So sometimes I just go back and revisit. But the songs we play live, I rarely listen to them because, I've heard them so many
Yeah.
times.
Because like if you listen to the first for example, if we listen to Empress Rising, compared to Neverending, it's quite different. But if you
Yeah,
listen to the albums, to all your six albums like in a row, you can see that this evolution, like first of all, makes big sense, and
yeah.
then that it was there since the very first record. So do you feel like sometimes like you want to stay within certain limits just to please, not to please, to just like to match some fans' expectations that were with you since the beginning?
I mean, I've seen some comments now about. I mean, I've seen that comments when the last record came out too, that it doesn't sound like the first two, and some people just have the first two as their favorites, and because they really like slow and sludgy, heavy stuff, and maybe not like more up tempo stuff, or maybe not more catchier stuff. But I mean, I don't want to write another record that sounds like, even though I totally respect that people think that Empress Rising is an awesome song. I think it's an awesome song too, but I don't want to make another song that sounds similar. It's just a bit boring to me. So I think it's really nice to sometimes when you find a band that say they release like 4 or 5 albums, and I hear a song here and there, and it's like, oh, this is really nice. And then I looking forward to start listening to the first record and go in order to have it, like, to see like how the bands evolve and see how I mean, that's like a band like Mastodon, for example. It's not my favorite band, but it's a really interesting band at times. And I did that once with them, just started from the beginning and listened to like 5 albums in a row or something. And I think it's really interesting to see a band like grow in different ways. And that's what
especially if you listen one by one, you notice immediately, like, but also like you see the connections between and then why they went somewhere.
And it's sometimes the progression feels very natural to, and I think it's been a curve of, I mean, the first record it's more or less just full on like distortion like all the time. It's just but then on the second album it started with some more mellower stuff like Cosmic Silence, and we had some more quieter parts here and there, and that thing just kept on.
You started like with the psychedelic elements very early on in the end, so there's no surprise that we have songs like Crystal Bridge, like in the new album, which has this amazing center part that it's so spacey.
It's sometimes it can be nice to have a frame, but I mean, I feel it's more interesting when you do stuff that you haven't really done before, create new sound landscapes, or different kinds of riffs, or like as Jörgen as a guest vocalist to. A buddy of mine told me once that one of the nicer compliments I've had, like he told me once that when I listen to your songs, I really like how I don't really know what to expect next, and that to me, to make that still feel kind of natural, to have parts where it's really unexpected things, that I think that's a really nice thing. And I like that.
So we're almost at the end, so I'm not going to take too much longer of your time. Just a couple of questions. Like first, about your next touring schedule, which is going to be like taking basically like all your year, I guess. From May, then you go to the States, come back to Europe for some festivals in summer, go back to the States, and then Europe again for a long European tour. You will be in Italy as well, I believe, in November. So like, how do you prepare for such an extensive touring schedule? And like, is there moments where you think is like too much that you miss home?
I mean, I think that was one of the reasons we took a break a couple of years ago, because we toured like all the time. And sometimes it felt like you didn't have any time to just rest. But so that's why we've been sure to put in at least some weeks between every like run of shows. So after, as you said, like after the first US tour, we're going to be in Europe for almost 2 months, and then go back to the US. And after that US tour, we're home for 2.5, 3 weeks, and then we go on like 11 or 12 days in Europe, and then have another 2.5 weeks, and then we'll do the last. So we just try this time to have some space in between to just get home and rest. Maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe it's better to just do it all in one go and
Push through.
be home for a longer time. But now we have no days off because it's a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
So there's some days off in the US though, because it's a long drives sometimes. But
Yeah.
Other than that, it's a show like every day almost. And it's going to be interesting to see because we haven't really done this before.
Yeah.
This way.
And like last question, you've as being like we said 6 years, 6 albums in 12 years, extensive tour schedules. When it comes to the band, do you ever think about like do you ever think in the long term, like where do you think where do you want Monolord to be in 10 years, or where you want Monolord to be in 20 years?
In 20 years, it's probably wheelchair. Uh,
No.
but we're getting old now. But I think we all look forward, but it's in this at the same time it's really hard to imagine what happened. I mean, it's just sometimes it's just coincidence that sometimes when a band breaks, or you get on the right opening. I mean, get on a tour that it's with some other bands that's really good and it just takes off, or I just hope that the new record does well. And I mean, we have indications that it goes well, and after that we're gonna tour this year, and then I mean in a couple of months we're gonna start planning the next year.
Okay.
So, but we don't really plan like 1 year ahead at a time, but at the same time, I mean, it's just nice if people buy records, come to shows, and we can like grow a little every time. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Okay, actually, no, one last thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw any UK tour dates in the schedule.
No,
Is that
we're
right? You're not coming to the UK this year.
not this year, because it's a bit of a hassle since the UK is not a part of the EU
Yeah.
anymore. You have to get up like in the middle of the night and cross through the passport control, and then if you have a lot of stuff with you, you have to have a list of all the stuff you have with you.
Yes.
And get the paper that you have to get signed, and sometimes people like don't know who's gonna sign it, and it's just a pain in the ass, and it's a little bit more expensive now too, but we are discussing some way to do it for next year for sure.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Thomas. Thanks
you.
for your time today.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.